Well, Donald, I'll have you know that I don't find your behavior amusing at all. If the prince is to assume the royal duties that are incumbent on him,
You're on. I told you, Daddy. My name is Bugs. No, your MC name is B. Rabbit. We gotta appeal to today's kid. No longer Looney Tunes. We're Live Looney Tunes. Oh, real hip-hop dog. So, what do you think of the old gator boat now? I installed the new inverse propulsion system that's sure to be... Were you fishing all by yourself again?
Yep. That boy can't even play league human. He ain't nothing but a tadpole.
You gotta take one for the team. I knew you were too flexible and real.
What is it? He's over shit.
We never got a problem. You gotta cut it off back to him.
Oh, if you would be so kind.
I'd be delighted.
The fine specimen observed here is commonly known as a ghost.
Ghost?
Why, you, my friend.
Me?
Yes, you have just joined the ranks of the supernatural.
Oh, that explains what all that racket was out there.
How many cups of sugar does it take to get to the moon?
3.5.
Gosh, your sweet voice is music to my ears.
Like we're thrown in the drink, like we're tossed out of town. But when I start to sleep, I'd rather go down. Nobody else but why are you? Ah, Dad.
I got an invitation too. Where do I put it? Oh yeah, in my hat.
Well, settle down, Donald. It's only temporary.
That's right. Just long enough to demonstrate how to end a cartoon. Begin at the end by chasing each other into the distance, then scream comically. Followed by an iris scout.
Please welcome Bill Farmer.
Thank you, thank you.
Gosh, you look pretty good up there, didn't you?
I did that. Song? It is on. Good.
It is on. Can you hear us okay? Yeah. All right. Okay. It's great to be here. First of all, it's great to be here, and I want to tell you that we had to give up our son's birthday party yesterday because his birthday was yesterday. He's back in Los Angeles, partying at our house, drinking my liquor. He turned 24. We did call. The house is still there. The neighbors have not rioted, so everything turned out just fine, and no better place that I would rather be than right here. And we thought that we were going to ask some questions. People, did I want to do a stand-up routine? Did I want to sing or whatever? I decided that we would do question and answer because that is always the most fun. Answering what you guys want to know about voiceover, the characters. We have prepared some questions that are some of the most common questions that I get through the years, and I'll be answering those, and also I'll be asking for questions from the audience. And at the end, I have a little song that I'm going to do, kind of in the Christmas spirit. So that is coming up. But I wanted to get kind of the questions and answer anything and everything you've always wanted to know about Goofy, but we're afraid to ask.
Well, first of all, I want to ask your background, like where you're from and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I grew up in a little town in south central Kansas. The name is Pratt, Kansas. Has anyone ever heard of Pratt, Kansas?
Yep.
That's about right.
Hey.
This room has more the population than Pratt does. It's about 80 miles west of Wichita, south central Kansas, and we were known for our yearly showing of The Wizard of Oz and tornadoes. And that's about it. But I grew up there, and I was one of those kids that was enamored with television and the movies, because there wasn't anything else to do in a little midwestern town like that. We had one theater that I went to every Saturday for a double feature, the Three Stooges cartoons, and I just I imagine myself being up there on the screen and being in the movie business. But you know, when you're growing up in Kansas, it's about 1,000,000 miles away and didn't seem realistic. So I kind of put that out of my mind for years and years, but it came back with a vengeance, and luckily I wound up in Hollywood.
Awesome, awesome. So then, growing up, what other jobs, when you were an adult, before you became a voice actor,
Yes.
what other things did you do?
Well, my degree, first of all, in high school, I did kind of find out through my friends that I should go into this business. It's kind of, sometimes you just get pushed. I was a very shy kid. My parents, there was a guy on our block that didn't even know that I existed. He knew that I had an older sister, and they finally found out that they have a son. I was very shy. I was always in our basement, and I was doing, making little movies with our 8mm camera, and I was working on voices, and I would listen to television on Saturday morning and practice, and my favorite ones in those days were things like, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and I would run around going, "Hey Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat." And my parents were,
Billy's weird. I don't know why he's doing this.
my dad had no idea. He worked at an irrigation company, and it's weird. I don't know. I'd come up to dinner, and I would try and do voices. I found out I had a propensity for doing voices, and I would come up as George Burns, and "Hello, Mother, what are we having for dinner?" Kid's weird. And it just kind of worked its way into, my friends thought it was great, because when I got old enough, they would put me up to do jokes. I would do things like impersonate my teachers. I could do some sound effects. One of my favorites was when the teacher was writing on the blackboard, I would go, and I could do a little bit louder in those days, but yeah, the teacher would look around, and it was big fun. And when we got old enough, they would put me up to do pep assemblies at my high school. My hometown had the world's worst mascot. We were the Pratt Frogs. The Pratt Greenbacks. And our junior college that was in Pratt had the Pratt Beavers. So beavers and frogs don't really inspire fear in an opposing team. But my friends would get me up and they'd say, "Oh, do John Wayne," or something like that. And I'd get up there, "Okay, gang, let's get them wagons in a circle and we'll go out there and beat them Dodge City demons." And my friends would think that was cool. So I kind of got known around the school for doing these wacky voices. And we would drive through places like Burger King and push the button and order in weird, they'd say, "Order in a weird voice." And
I'd like a Whopper with cheese and Arnold with pig, like a Coca-Cola.
That would work out. So I was just that weird kid that did voices.
So you imitated famous people, but were there any voice actors in the business that that influenced you?
Oh, absolutely. And I always loved the impressionist. I loved Rich Little, and I'd watch him on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he'd come out there, and I actually picked up. You can pick up voices by listening to how they do it. He would always do the George Barge thing, And he would always do a lot of the presidents, and so I would practice those as far back when I was 10. I would start to do Kennedy and stuff like that. And not what your country to do for you, know. And then later came, Lyndon Johnson, my fellow Americans. It is with a heavy heart that I pick up the dogs by their ears or something. Horse Richard Nixon when I was older. You do that. Of course, later on, I always do those impressions. Or a senior. Well, as a matter of fact, you don't even have to, with Reagan, you don't even have to say anything. And so, it's always fun to do political ones, and later on you did things like that. I started doing all of these wacky voices. And I figured, what career could I get into that would kind of lend itself to that? I studied acting in college, went to the University of Kansas, and but still, theater, there wasn't any theater in Kansas. There wasn't any outlet for that. There was radio. There was radio stations. I figured, well, maybe I could get into radio. So I got a degree in broadcast journalism, and I did kick around for a number of years in radio and was one of those late night guys that always sounded like that. Okay, we got a great talent. We're going to be playing Saxon Lax from dusk till dawn tonight, okay? And I did that for about 3 years throughout, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, and I would get bored, so I would invent characters. And I would have people like, I would do like rock and roll with Wolfman Jack. Oh, baby, you remember Wolfman Jack? He got a voice like this here. Oh, yeah. That's my voice. He doesn't do it too long there, baby. And so, hey, Wolfman, come on in. Hey, baby, how you doing? And so we would do kind of back and forth stuff, and I didn't know there were copyrights or anything like that. Characters. And Wolfman works at our station. And I did that a few years. Then I got out of that, and I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. And this is in 1982. And I decided, I'd gotten out of radio at that time, and I worked, my minor was in electronics, so I was an electronics technician. And I worked at a company that made computer chips. And I'm just not a 9-to-5 guy. And there was a comedy club that was in Dallas called the Comedy Corner. And in the early 80s, a lot of the great comics today were coming out. And I would see them all come through before they were famous. Robin Williams and Bill Engvall, who was just, if you know him, of the country comedy. He was our house comic. And he was really wrote a little 5-minute routine on an open mic night, went up and did some impressions and things, and got a good response. And he said, oh, why don't you hang around and start coming, week to week? You ought to do this. So it was him that really gave me my first encouragement. I started doing that week after week, and within a few months, I started doing a stand-up comedy in clubs around Texas.
That's awesome. Are you still doing stand-up comedy on the side? Or?
Yeah, I actually am. For the last 10 or 12 years, I've been in a sketch comedy group hosted by Fred Willard, if you know him. And he has a group called the Mohos, as in more ho-ho-hos, like more hoes, There's more laughter is what it means. And we do sketches, and we put them up monthly at the Second City Theater in Hollywood, which is a great venue, because there's nothing like stage work for a voiceover actor. Anyone that wants to get into voice acting, you need stage work, because the instant rapport you have with an audience is, you can't duplicate that in a studio, because when I do a cartoon, it's just me and a script, and you don't know how it plays. But playing in front of an audience night after night, and it's a very true form of performance, because there's no pity laughter. You are either funny or you aren't, and you will find out real quick which it is, and you learn how to perform in front of an audience.
That's awesome. So can you tell us how Disney came into your life professionally?
Well,
Disney all your life.
No. And this was not on my agenda to work with Disney. I, of course, did, and as a matter of fact, Goofy was my favorite Disney character. He was not a part of my stand-up routine at the time. And I moved out to California in 1986. I should mention my lovely wife Jennifer's here. We got married. We're coming up on 30 years of being married. June 2nd of '84 we got married. And after about a couple of years, and I was doing and I gotta tell a story too. She has been so supportive to me through the years. She, as a matter of fact, I quit my job at the electronics company the day before we got married. She quit her job selling, what were you selling at that time?
Writing jingles.
Writing jingles at that time. She has a music degree and was writing jingles in Dallas. She quit her job and I quit my job the day before we got married to go full-time working on my career, which thrilled her parents. He did what? You know. Her dad, who was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, he was like, Mr. Military, yes sir. He was like, I think his exact words were, why doesn't he do something honest, like take out the trash for a living? He wasn't too keen on that. But cut to several years later, after I got the role of Goofy, and we would bring him from Melbourne, where he lived, over here, and we'd get him behind and meet celebrities and things like that. One Sunday, we went to Melbourne, to his church, and he introduced me this way to some of his friends. He said, "This is my son-in-law, Bill Farmer, and his wife, Jennifer." Jennifer's going, "Dad!" I knew I made it there. So we decided in 1986 that, everyone said, with all the voices you do, you ought to go out to Hollywood and give it a shot. And I said, if I don't, I'm going to kick myself when I'm 60, So I came out to Hollywood, got an apartment in Hollywood. Jennifer stayed in Dallas because I didn't know, I'd say, I'll give this a year or so and see what happens. And I was doing stand-up comedy around the country in different clubs, so I kind of commuted back and forth. And about 4 or 5 months after I lived in Los Angeles, my agent called and said, "Do you do any of the Disney characters?" Because at the time there were 4 or 5 guys doing Mickey. They had a guy for records. They had a guy who was doing it at the parks, different parks. They just launched the Disney Channel, so you heard different people doing the voice at that time. And Roy Disney and Michael Eisner wanted consistency. So you always had the same voice, always heard the same character. And they had a big audition. And I said, I can kind of do a Mickey, because most people, if you can get that falsetto, gosh, oh boy, you can kind of get up there.
That's great, isn't
in the Mickey Mouse rank. Well, I hung around with him for 28 years. And Donald is tough to do. You can go, that's about all I can do. But the worst, Goofy was right in the wheelhouse. And for some reason, I just nailed it very quickly. And took home a cassette tape of Pinto Colvig and all of the lines that he did in Boat Builders, in Lonesome Ghost, that era, the 1930s. And over one weekend, I practiced, went in on a Monday and laid it down, copying what Pinto had done on this reference tape. And about a month later, in December of 1986, they called and said, they'd like to use you for Goofy. Now, it's not that, yes, here is your lifelong contract, you're now a big movie star. No, it's a one-time deal for a cartoon show. And it was a show called Disney's Doggone Valentine. It was the old DTV, if you remember that. And I had to loop to an existing piece of footage of Goofy from an older cartoon, like Automania, or one of the ones in the 50s. Goofy's looking back over his shoulder, and I had to replace the dialogue, and I had to say, "Or should put my foot on the accelerator, and I'm out of here quick." Now, when I went to the studio, I'd never been in a studio like this. I was terrified. I didn't really know, I'd never looped something to, like watching the picture and replacing the dialogue, so you have to put the lip flaps perfectly, and I was very scared. I met Tony Anselmo and Wayne Allwine that day, who were doing their lines, and I remember that Tony was drawing, who was an animator, and was drawing Donald, and just doing a perfect job of it. And I swear, I thought to myself, we don't have to draw these characters. I thought I was hired just for the voice. And luckily, all I got to do is talk like me. And we got through that session, And about a month and a half later, they called me again. And then that one, it was for another DTV, Monsters. It was a Halloween special. And it was the first time I worked with a celebrity. It was Gary Owens, if you remember.
Gary Owens from Left End. He was the announcer.
And he was very nice and very, hello, Bill, how are you? And we got to share a microphone. So he was right here and I was right here. And we got to do one of those NBC openings with a peacock, you know. And he would say, the following program is brought to you in living color. And I would say, ham and stereo on NBC. And I was just in hog heaven because I'd worked with a celebrity, and off it ran. You know, we started, and then, next month I did another one, maybe once a month, and it got more and more frequent. And by that summer, I told Jennifer to come out to LA and we'll set down roots there. I think this is going to work. And after 28 years next month, they're still using them.
That's awesome. I think on your video presentation here that your favorite performance was the Goofy movie?
Yeah. How many love the Goofy movie?
Oh,
Yeah, that was a labor of love and a lot of stress on my part, because the first that I had heard about it, the word was that they might use a celebrity to do Goofy. And the word was, because in those days, and they still do, they use a lot of celebrities. And I know that I think Jeffrey Katzenberg was in charge of that, and he likes using celebrities. And they were talking to Steve Martin and Jim Varney about maybe doing that, and I think they may have done some tests. But it didn't work, so I came in and I started recording on that. And we would, when we record a cartoon, we have a script. And usually it takes a couple of hours. We had done the series Goof Troop before this in the early 90s, and it takes us about 3-4 hours to do a 40-page script. Goofy movie, we worked off and on for about 2.5 years. Different scenes where they would write something, they would, no, that didn't quite work, let's rewrite it, and it got rewritten and rewritten. It had started out originally as a Goof Troop movie, and then evolved into the movie that it did slowly and over time. So, running around the barn and trying different things, I think came out with a tremendous movie that surprised even the studio.
Awesome movie.
The third highest rated grossing animated movie in 1995, with really, for a little picture that they didn't think was going to do anything. So thanks to everybody out there, that loved it and still love it. And all the time I hear people that say that's their favorite movie.
That's awesome. I want to ask you about doing voiceovers for parks around the world.
Yes.
Are you the official Goofy for Japan? Can you speak Japanese?
Not that you would understand.
Can
No.
you just do Goofy in Japanese?
And I know that it sounds that way because we did a series of games called Kingdom Hearts, which was produced in Japan first. And I was hearing in my headphones the Japanese Goofy, and I had to re-loop that into English. Now, it's so funny because many years ago, for around the world, they have like 40-some languages that they translate about every Disney product into. So there's about 40-some different Goofies that are, doing the characters in other languages. And many years ago, I sat down with the studio and we kind of talked about how to do the laugh, what is the character like, and they show that to all the actors around the world that do these characters. The Japanese actor had broken down, it was very weird, Goofy's laugh, which is a difficult thing to do. It's like, but the Japanese actor had broken it down very methodically into 3 distinct parts. And it was very kind of robotic. It was like, He learned how to do it by listening to me. So I was looping a guy in Japanese back into English that he learned by listening to my English, and he was doing it in Japanese. It's very convoluted. I like doing Pluto more because I can do Pluto in any language.
So, as a character artist, and Don can attest to this, we are asked to sometimes draw the characters, but maybe they don't understand our character integrity, or they don't understand our characters' personalities.
Yes.
So, as a voice actor, as Goofy's voice, you have to know Goofy, you know his personality. So, when you get some of these writers that might write something for a script,
Yeah.
do you ever challenge them? Oh, Goofy would never say something like that.
Especially in the early days when they would have, Disney had like 9,000 licensees for the characters and different toys, products, everything from computer games to talking watches, and they would all write scripts. And it got to where, you know, Goofy wouldn't say it this way. And I would have to say, this is the way that Goofy would really say it. And they would use, oh, well, you know, you're the voice, and that's pretty good. But then they developed Disney Character Voices, the division of Disney that handles the quality. And they kind of take the scripts before we get them and go over it and make sure that Mickey says lines that Mickey would say, or Goofy would say these lines, and get the scripts and all of that stuff worked out before we go into the recording studio. And it makes it so much easier for us to do so.
Right. So that's awesome. So I want to ask you a little bit about, gosh, I just lost my train of thought here.
That happens to me all the time.
So you auditioned for Goofy, but not Pluto at the same time.
Actually, that came on the first couple of times. They actually needed Pluto on that first show, just to bark or so. And it was like an on-the-spot thing. Can you bark? And I, whoa! You know, I barked, and they liked it. And I've been doing Pluto ever since. It was that simple. It was kind of like, you know, can you bark? Okay, you're good.
So you're considered the second official voice of
Yes. Pinto Colvig originated the voice, and I took over.
Right, exactly. And for Mickey's Christmas Carol, though, that was Otis from Andy Griffith.
Hal Smith. Several people over the years have voiced Goofy in that kind of the years, which I call it was Goofy du jour. It was like whoever, and it's interesting, I've also voiced a lot of Mel Blanc's characters, Foghorn Leghorn, Sylvester the Cat, Yosemite Sam, Bugs and Daffy, but Warner's is not like Disney in that they've never really had a set-in-stone set of actors. It seems to be different directors would do castings, and they would have several different people. I wish they'd like stick with one group of actors because it gives integrity to the characters.
So can you tell us any stories over the years at the studios, the Disney studios?
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
Any that stand out in your head?
Let's see. Let's see. What would be? You got any ideas, Jen?
Jen knows.
Dr. Daisy.
Dr. Daisy?
Dr. Daisy.
Oh, that
Yes.
one. Oh, okay. Well, that gets into talking about our recording schedule and the way that we record. Is a lot of people say, are we watching the movie when we record? Are we together in the studio? Yes and no. Generally, when we get a script, it's just a written sheet with Goofy's lines on it and Mickey's lines, like a radio play. In the old days, we would record like a radio play. All the actors would be in a room. Like when we did Goof Troop, all 8 or 9 of us would be in a same room. We ran it like a radio play. And we would just do pickups here and there, but we just run it. Now, they generally record my lines separately. I'll go in, I'm not with any other actors, and I just do them. I'll do, let's say, each line 5 times. They'll take the best of those 5. Wayne would have come in and do his lines, and they take the best of his 5 lines and marry them together and edit it. The reason they did that in our show, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, the first season we were doing ensemble, until we had an episode called Dr. Daisy. And the reason that this is, Daisy was a doctor, playing like she was a doctor. Well, and I swear, I don't know, this didn't go through Disney Character Voices first, because one of the lines was that Mickey was supposed to say, he says, let's all blow on Goofy's boo-boo. Well, if you knew Wayne Allwine, who had a devilish sense of humor, you know, you would twist that line any way you can. and I had to say that, yeah, Daisy, blow on my poo-poo. I had to say these lines. It took me about 15 minutes to say that line without cracking up. Brucey Taylor, who does many, was laying on the floor laughing, turning red, and Wayne was just egging her on by saying, gosh, after that, would she blow on my poo-poo? And we couldn't say the line. It took like 20, 25 minutes of just laughing hysterically like idiots. And they're like, okay, yeah, we're on the clock here. We need to get this done. But we got through that sketch, and after that episode, or a couple after that, they decided to record it separately. So they would save a lot of time and money by not recording us and having us just fall apart laughing.
That's awesome. I'm sure there's many, many more, but we don't have so much time. But, so not only are you a Disneyana fan club legend,
Yes.
you're also a Disney legend.
Yes.
So